Amazing. So we're live. We're still waiting for one of our speakers to join, but perhaps I see that we have some audience joining already. And it would be wonderful to perhaps start so that we don't lose much time. And um, thank you everyone for joining our today's event of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens and its EVWA Council. My name is Anna, and I will be moderating today's event. And I am a program officer at the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens working on its women and youth portfolio. And it's a great pleasure for us to be here today at the World Food Forum flagship event, where we will be discussing issues of central concern for the work that we do at the Ban Ki-moon Center. And perhaps we can wait one or so minutes to allow more people to join before I pass the floor over for our keynote remarks for our CEO, Monica Fröhle. I see at the moment we are 12 people in the call. From which 4 are attendees. So perhaps let's give it a minute, but otherwise the webinar will also be recorded and available for the audience to catch up with afterwards. And perhaps it would be worth starting already. So I'm very delighted to introduce our dear CEO of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, Monica Fröhle, who will set the scene for today's discussion with her opening remarks. The floor is yours, Monica.
Thank you very much. Hello to everyone who is joining us today. We are excited to talk about elevating the voices of women in agriculture. It is very important, we believe, to address the intersectional challenges that are there and particularly faced by women farmers. Today, I'm happy that we have experts with us, key stakeholders, decision makers, of course, and farmers, young change makers, as much as key actors in the whole agricultural space. It is significant that this week, and just yesterday, pretty much, we celebrated the International Day of Rural Women. So we are honoring, even with today's session, their hard work and their role that they play in the international food security system. It is all about sustainable agriculture. The world will only thrive and survive if we have enough food. And unfortunately, we are still fighting against hunger. And SDG 2 is not just a key word, but it is a true goal that needs to be fulfilled in the years to come until 2030. Today is World Food Day. And it's a timely reminder that each and every one of us is dependent on food and that we should dedicate some of our life's energy to actually curb the plight of so many around the globe. According to the FAO, women produce 60 to 80% of the food in developing countries. And indeed, women are responsible for half of the world's food production overall. So it would be amiss to leave out women in the discussion. So we don't do that, but quite on the contrary, want to stress how much women are contributing, but also how much they are disproportionately actually affected by climate change and by gender inequalities and by limited access to resources, to land, and often also to leadership. Mentioning that, I would like to draw your attention to the Ban Ki-moon Center's work on elevating the voices of women in agriculture. We call it the EVWA campaign, and you see it on all of our background slides. The campaign is there to amplify voices, particularly of smallholder farmers and their problems, their challenges that they currently have, because it's often that they are not represented at decision-making tables. We have worked in the past couple of months with 12 EVWA Council experts. 3 of them have joined us here today as well. They want to make sure that women farmers can drive solutions and can make policy recommendations that are then introduced to decision makers worldwide. So the EVWA Council helped us to bring together multiple perspectives and to formulate 3 important policy briefs that we have now combined into a greater one. These policy briefs were dealing with findings on access to land and the problems associated to that, access to resources and the challenges that are out there, and of course also access to leadership. We want to stress that these publications try to catalyze policy change. So we really want to use them as papers that will actually drive momentum to shift the needle. We will need all of the stakeholders. It's impossible that only one entity or one farmer alone can do that. It will need a whole collective action between governments, private sector, civil society to bridge this gap between policy and actual realities on the ground for women smallholder farmers. So please do check out our EVWA policy papers that we have generated, particularly in the eye of building a more resilient and more sustainable food system. Maybe to close my remarks, I would like to mention that I have just come back a couple of weeks ago from Kenya and from a very inspirational field excursion that we undertook to I&J Harvest, who are producing iron and zinc-rich beans that are of particularly high nutritious value. Having seen their good work, working with 65,000 farmers, being led by a lady farmer themselves, like I&J Harvest is led by Emma, we were interacting with many of the farmers there and asked them, would you want any other job in this day and age where climate is hitting you hard, where there are droughts, where there are heavy rains, where there are conditions that are often not conducive at all? Would you want any other job but being a smallholder farmer? And our smallholder farmer colleagues, they were giggling and laughing, and all of them answered, absolutely not. Smallholding is our dream job. This is what we want to do, because we see that we can nourish our kids and we can feed our families, and it's labor that we truly enjoy because we are contributing to the community. To keep the possibility of contributing to the community effectively, we do want our EVWA recommendations to be obviously listened to. So the Ban Ki-moon Center will make sure that in our interactions with policymakers, we will bring forward the recommendations, and we will always try to take young change makers and smallholder farmers along to talk to the ministers of agriculture, to talk to the ministers of environment, to talk to presidents and prime ministers, and whoever we can reach under the chapeau of the Ban Ki-moon Center to make their voices heard. So I want to thank you that you are here with us today and are dedicating some of your time to the issue. And I'm very happy that we will have an interesting panel discussion that is hosted by the Ban Ki-moon Center and moderated by Anna Tihonenko, one of my dear colleagues, with our esteemed council members that have advised us over the past couple of months. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I want to wish you all the best for the next hour, and I do hope that we can shift the needle to a sustainable and resilient future for smallholder farmers, particularly women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica, for those inspirational remarks and setting this bright start to our today's panel. As has been mentioned already, this week is a very important one for food security and for women in agriculture. And in particular, yesterday, on the International Day of Rural Women, we were proud to launch the paper that EVWA Council has been working on for the past months that deals with 3 key topics, which are women's access to land, access to leadership, and access to resources. And the council is composed of 12 members from different sectors, 5 of whom are joining us here for the panel discussion. Unfortunately, only 4 are present due to one person's health issues. He is at the hospital now. However, I'm glad to introduce those members that we are lucky to have here with us today. And I'll be very brief so that we can jump straight into the discussion. And we are honored to have Valerie Guarnieri with us today, who is the Assistant Executive Director for Program Operations at World Food Programme. the organization that is fighting against global hunger and is reaching over 150 million people in urgent need. We are delighted to have Nyeforti Principal Ghana, who is EVWA Champion of 2023 and is the founder of Sustain Africa, where they train widows in snail farming, working on intersectional challenges that those women face. We're delighted to have Hilary Berry, who is the founder and Secretary General at Lady Agri, the organization that supports African women throughout agricultural value chains. And we have Eike Sindlinger, who is the global leader for food and agriculture systems at Arup, and thus he represents the private sector perspectives in our today's discussions. And last but not least, Neil Fourie has contributed very significantly to Council's discussions with his years of experience at UK government's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, where he has been working as the agriculture attaché and representing UK at FAO negotiations. And unfortunately, he is unable to join us today, but he has kindly shared his remarks, so I might fill some gaps in the discussion using his contribution in that sense. And we have this wonderful multidisciplinary panel, so without much further ado, I would like to jump to the first question. And we're talking about the intersectional challenges that women farmers are facing. And perhaps that's a great point to start with. What are those challenges that we're talking about? What are some of the key pressing problems that you identify that women farmers, smallholder farmers in particular, are facing? And I think perhaps it would be great to start with Nyeforti, joining us from the farm today in Cameroon. Nyeforti, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Greetings from the farm. We are having an amazing time, and we are here, and we're here to solve a problem actually. So we had late winds. So I'm going to the problem. So the winds did not come early this year. We're expecting them in March. So our mothers rushed and planted, and eventually everything got bad. So they had to get more seeds, and we planted during the month of July. And then rain has fallen in July. We had June, July, August, and now the rains are going. That's just 3 months of rainfall. So we had an issue where we decided to come down to the farm to be able to do irrigation. So I want to say that based on first-hand experience as an agricultural consultant and also someone who is into community development, what I've seen is the biggest problem we have now, to me, is climate change. I know we talk about land. I think my women now, some of them are having land. So the land tenure system is gradually changing. The women are more accepted into that. But now the biggest issue is, okay, there is a land. What do you go? You have to go groundnuts, you have to go vegetable and all of these things. And you have to go them during the seasons where water is available, since rural women cannot afford to irrigate their farms. But now what is going on is that there is adverse weather conditions is hitting really hard on these women. And I think this is the major challenge that we face right now. There are women who basically abandoned their farms this year in Cameroon, Nigeria, and other areas because of the drought. So the winds did not come early. And then there are women who, after planting, experience flood, like what happened in northern Cameroon and in areas like Kaduna in Nigeria, where there was total flood. And now these women grow food crops like probably vegetables, tomato, and all of that. They don't grow cash crops. And these crops are more prone to the changes in climate. For instance, you can have flood in the cocoa farm, and then you eventually, when the flood goes away, your cocoa farm will still be standing, your oil palm will still be there. But with things like vegetable, assuming you plant huckleberry, everything will be lost, because as the flood comes in, it takes everything away with it. So this is the biggest challenge we face right now. The second challenge we also face is my female farmer, that amazing woman I'm with right now. One of our biggest challenges too is in terms of managing the home and farming. It's becoming a huge challenge right now because women have been relegated to be taking care of their kids and all of that. Doing home activities. This is another big problem that I think we should address, because if we want to truly empower women and want women to be independent, we have to let them go out there and chase their dreams. For instance, there was a crisis in my client's farm, like I said, because I also have clients as a consultant, and most of them are women because I choose to work with them. I also have community development work. So we've had crises, and in some situations I come to the farm and the women are not in the farm. I'll be there from probably morning to 12 and they are not there. And the question you ask them, they say, no, I was in the house. I had to take care of the child. I had to make sure they go to school and all of that. But farming does not wait. The crops are not waiting for you. They need to have everything they need to survive. So it becomes a huge challenge. So I think that at one point we have to be able to educate women, men to be able to have some kind of joint partnership in the way they take care of the home, so that women will be able to have ample time to be able to take care of their activities. Lastly, what I would say, based on experience, I know there are so many challenges, but based on experience, lastly, what I would say is this. Another challenge, like, is the biggest, when one of the biggest conferences where the biggest stakeholders in agriculture in Cameroon came together in Douala, and one of the things we wanted to invest, there's this land, 400 hectares and all of that, all these things were coming up. And so we needed funding. Now, so we called someone and he was like, no, you can have funding, but you have to grow a specific type of crop that is appeasing to the international market. And what they mentioned was Hass avocado, they mentioned soya bean and all of that. And we all know that these crops are not grown they are not mostly grown by women. Hass avocado mostly grown by men. So we come to understand that there's a real issue in funding, because if women don't grow these crops, so they might not really have funding for tomato farming, they will not have funding for all of these things. So I think at one point, at international community, we also have to understand that, yes, women are more inclined to growing food crops, but can we now have funding and source for markets and be able to, so that they can also have opportunities where they can seek for funding internationally, seek for capital from different banks based on what they produce, and not necessarily because the international community is more centric to crops that are used as raw materials like cocoa, Hass avocado, which is used for cosmetic purposes. So I think this is also issues that, to me, I think that they are really pertinent, and we must try to solve.
That's a
Thank you.
Wonderful contribution. Thank you, Neforti, for this comprehensive overview of main issues that women farmers are facing. Perhaps is there anything that our other panelists would like to add to that? Some other key issues, key challenges that are often overlooked, or something that you discovered through EVWA Council discussions, perhaps? Would anybody like to add to this?
Yeah,
yes,
I would like to add, and this is, I think, is a key point, and I think Neforti was mentioning it. So women have the dual responsibility for working at home and running the farm. And really the question is, where are we? Where are the men in this? And I think, like, throughout, it's kind of like, if women are able to do this amazing work and are able to actually grow the crops that feed the family rather than, and I mean, fair enough, we need both, the crops that bring in some money and the crops that feed the family, then the men need to do their share in supporting them. And I think that goes throughout the chain. And we had this in many cases. We discussed land, access to land being an issue. Now, I'm pleased to hear that that's almost fallen away over the year we've been, probably hasn't fallen away, but hopefully has become less of an issue during the year we've been having these discussions. But in that process of empowering women to get access to land, to have equal right and access to resources, it is really the support and the allyship of men to help women in this process and be their voice at the table when they're not invited in, when they're not allowed to be there, and make sure they are invited in and that they are at the table and that their perspective is heard. Because honestly, I'll be very honest, I'm not very good at representing a female perspective, but the best I can do is make sure they are present and that they're heard.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eike. It's definitely very important to include men in this discussion on improving women farmers' realities. And that's a big topic that we have in front of us today. The next question I would like to ask is actually to you, Valerie. Given World Food Programme's extensive experience in the area that we're talking about today, could you perhaps talk us through some examples of best practice responses to the type of challenges that we are discussing today?
Well, thank you for the question, and I was encouraged to hear from Neforti that in Cameroon some of the issues around land are starting to fall away, but clearly there's a number of different challenges that the report amplifies, and this conversation that we're having gets to the heart of three key challenges, I think, that we confront every day in our work as the World Food Program. You know, we often talk about women as the backbone of agricultural production, especially in Africa where they produce most of the food. Yet women navigate an uneven playing field, and they have these layers of compounding disadvantages. It's not just gender equality, it's gender inequality plus poverty, and gender inequality plus climate change, and gender inequality plus a lack of political power, and these interconnected, the intersectionality that is highlighted creates unique barriers for women. And I mean, we do find in many countries that access to land does remain one of the very big hurdles that women face, and they can be legally or socially restricted from owning land. They may farm the land but not hold the title, so can't use it for collateral, for loans or investments. And then this limits their ability to grow their farms and feed their families. Without that critical ownership part of access, the economic security remains fragile. But women farmers also often don't have the essential inputs, whether that's seeds or fertilizer or the right mechanization. And when these are available, women tend to be the last to benefit from them. And this can be compounded by limited access to extension services and training. It's hard to adopt climate smart practices or diversify your production when you don't have the access to the knowledge or the tools that you need. So some of the ways that we're addressing these challenges, particularly in our work in more fragile contexts or contexts where even conflict is an issue, we aim to prioritize gender equality and women's empowerment in everything we do. And that means empowering women and ensuring that they have equal opportunity, access to resources, and a voice in decision-making. And we have a few specific tools and ways in which we do that. And I'll just highlight a few. One is, well, if I take Kenya for an example, we've been working with women in the arid northern regions of Turkana and Wajir on climate smart infrastructure. And these are women who face severe barriers to land access and income. They're challenged to feed their families. They're dealing with changing weather patterns. So our asset and livelihood programs enable women to diversify their incomes and more efficiently and effectively manage water, grow resilient crops, and reduce their vulnerability to climate shocks. We've been working with partners to help train up dozens of women farmers as community-based facilitators so that it's the knockdown effect as they teach their women peers how to sustainably farm land even in the harshest conditions. And when we support women in this way, the women farmers report higher crop yields, which improves availability for their families and their communities. They report increased productivity, which translates into higher incomes, which allows them to invest in their households' education and healthcare. And we also hear about a sense of ownership and empowerment among women, and which encourages them to take more active roles in the communities, including participation in important decision-making opportunities. So these issues around climate smart assets and agriculture initiatives are key. Another layer in this intersectional challenge is financial exclusion. And women in agriculture are less likely, significantly less likely, to have access to financial services, as the report highlights, savings accounts, credit, or insurance. And this, of course, limits their ability to invest in better tools and diversify their crops or scale up. Without financial security, it's very difficult to break the cycle of subsistence farming. So we have an initiative called on rural resilience, where we're working to ensure that women can simultaneously access insurance to protect them from extreme climate risks, as well as climate smart tools and training. And that combination of insurance for when things go wrong and the right techniques to prevent further disaster is a lifeline. And we saw that in Madagascar, where we helped 4,000 women farmers access an area yield index insurance, which focuses on crop losses across an entire region rather than individual crop loss. And we paid the cost of the premium, the initial cost for the premium of the policy, with partners provided training on post-harvest management tools and climate smart agriculture practices, and payouts of $100 were triggered to insured households in response to crop failure. And they also were able to receive training on techniques to minimize post-harvest losses and support with tools and techniques to implement climate smart agriculture. And something similar was done in Uganda with smallholder farmers, which also was very supportive for them. And then maybe the third issue I would highlight is the one around unlocking access to decision-making and leadership. Women farmers are often politically marginalized. They're not part of decision-making processes that directly affect their livelihoods. In many of the countries where we work, WFP and our partners, we work with local governments and organizations to make sure, sometimes even to insist, that women have a seat at the table. And Colombia, our homegrown school meals support for government's own homegrown school meals program, is a great example of how women lead when they have the opportunity. Indigenous women farmers are providing food for local school meal programs, and that gives them an economic foothold and establishes them as community leaders. And these women have become decision makers, influencing what children eat and what and how food is produced. So these are just a few examples that show that you can't solve one challenge without addressing the others. And this intersectional lens needs to stay front and center. We need to address the whole system, and women need to be at the center of that process. This is very well reflected in the Council's policy recommendations, which provide a roadmap for empowering women in agriculture. And we're very committed as part of that at the World Food Program to work towards empowering women farmers as leaders, as innovators, and as change makers, which is absolutely critical for achieving food security and sustainable development overall.
Thank you very much, Valerie, for highlighting this crucial work that World Food Program does to support women in navigating the complex playing field with multiple unique barriers that they're facing, and also for highlighting the multi-layer benefits of female empowerment that come as a result of such actions. And I know that Hilary Berry, your organization, Lady Agri, has a very unique and comprehensive approach to empowering women in agriculture and beyond. So perhaps could you please share your success stories and case studies?
Of course. So thank you so much. Thank you to my fellow council members for preparing, giving me a segue into the presentation. So I think we spend a lot of time, once a year, there's a special week, which is this week, which is World Food Week, which we really discuss a lot of the time the problems. So Lady Agri is really orientated towards the solutions, and definitely in the work that we have done throughout the year. I think we also need to be inspired that we can take women out of the miserable category if we put on a different lens. And I think that is very much the call to action from the council, is that we look at women really as key change makers, as Valerie identified, who can change the food system if they were adequately tooled. So I'm going to share a few slides just to make sure everyone is focused on the real issues today. Can everyone see my screen? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Could you perhaps put it in presentation mode?
Yes. Okay. Right. So I'm going to take through the prism, the Lady Agri prism. So we've talked a lot about women's decision making in terms of food and feeding their families. But I'd like us to take a look at food as a tool for the economic empowerment of women. We all buy food, so there is a financial transaction which takes place. And so by making sure that women have the tools, it means that they are adequately paid for the work that they are doing. So their first option, as obviously in priority, is feeding their own family, but it's also an economic opportunity for women. So 6 years ago, we started Lady Agri because we thought there was very much a niche to look at the very specific needs of women, so that they could overcome these gender-based constraints, which my colleagues have really well detailed beforehand. So it's that very particular training and technical assistance it actually takes to grow food, to store food, to process food, and to get food to market. So that is our first pillar. The second is the access to agri-finance. And this is a very specific lens that we take. Agri-finance is very much different to traditional finance. Traditional finance, microfinance in Africa, where we are working, many of us, the interest rates are extremely, extremely high. And microfinance is not adapted to agri-finance needs. We need patient capital. We need to be able to have access to funding where we can buy equipment, but not at 18% interest rates. That is not possible, and it is a constraint, and we need to put a real lens on this issue, because it is something which is overlooked when we talk about investing in agriculture. And then the third pillar, all of this is to do what? It's to access markets. And to access markets, you need to be able to store the food, you need to be able to manage, you have the maximum quality product arriving. And as my colleague spoke about climate change, here is where we need equipment, here is where we need technology and climate smart equipment. So we work across 17 countries in Africa, that's just a very brief map. And we work on issues of, we talk about the individual women farmer will find it very hard doing it on her own to get out of that subsistence cycle. So we want to bring women from the subsistence to the agri-entrepreneurship. As Monica said, many farmers are very proud to be farmers, but we need to actually work as a group so we can actually get to scale. And any investment in agriculture needs scale. What does scale need? It needs structure. So we work with women and we formulate their different economic interest groups into fully functioning cooperatives. Cooperatives that are managed by women, run by women, women members. We're certainly not anti-men. That is definitely not the pitch from Lady Agri. However, the way the food system is structured, women work on specific crops. And so this is why we structure women into cooperatives that work on these food crops, that work in parallel to the cooperatives working on commodities, which could be cocoa and coffee. And that's a different way of working when these commodity crops are exported. So here we're looking at the food crops. We're also in a time where, because of the conflict worldwide, our food supply chains are extremely disrupted. We see the inflation, the costs. What is happening in Ukraine is having an impact on Côte d'Ivoire. What is happening in the Middle East is having an effect in Egypt, in countries which are dependent on usually trade with those countries before the conflict happened. So we need to be very conscious of the interconnectedness. So here is where we are looking to build strong, short supply chains where women first and foremost are able to sell on their local markets, then on their regional markets, and then growing in strength to actually be able to export to international markets. We're also looking at really equipping women, training for the sake of training, will not make a difference. And this is fundamental in the Lady Agri approach. So what you are looking at in front of you here is one of our climate smart solar dryers. It can produce up to a ton of food per day. With this dryer, we're also reducing women's workload, and we are also combating the issue of produce basically not getting to market due to food loss and spoilage. This has had an impact by increasing the women's groups that we work with, increasing their income by 7-fold. So this is also a measurable issue. And there are other issues which can be tackled, for example, just bringing light into the community. Many of our rural areas are dark at 5:30 in the evening, and we don't talk enough about women still not having access to water, to energy, to electricity, and this has a widespread negative effect also on the younger generations. The other issue is equipping women to be able to manage the logistics, that they can actually negotiate, that they can get the food to market. And as a cooperative, a structured cooperative, you can have access to a bank account when you're structured. You can also have access to negotiating in a more optimal fashion with regards logistics and transport. Going back again to the issue, it is very much, we're focused on women controlling food crops, even though they also contribute much to commodity, but they have more control over the financial income coming in from food crops. And by diversifying that family income, the whole family is actually increasing in terms of resilience. So my final slide is actually to show the impact. Right now in Cameroon, we have 16 different agri-food development poles managed and run by women. We're working on 10 priority food crops, plus cocoa, plus coffee. We're working in bringing other women's groups around these agri-food development poles. So as such, we are structuring a supply chain. We have 3,600 women members in our Cameroon group at present, which means we are impacting 42,000 household members. So I'll end on a very high note, and I would like the conversation to continue on that. And my message would be women have the potential, they have the capacity, if they are sufficiently equipped and supported and kept front and center, as Valerie mentioned. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hilary. And again, I see this red thread of empowering women as something that brings so many complex benefits to many challenges that we are seeing at the moment. And perhaps I would like to address the next question. And I'm also welcoming questions from the audience. I don't see any in the chat yet, but please do put some questions if you wish me to address them to our speakers. But I would like to ask Eike whether you are able to share rather briefly some other success stories and case studies of empowering women in agriculture. And I know you're focusing on access to land in your work quite often, but yes, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so less actual case studies, because in my work, unfortunately, I haven't had so much chance of promoting this so much. But I would just say in general, one thing I see is a big theme, and this has come through from what Hilary was talking about and Niforti was talking about, is just climate change and farming methods, and linked to that access to land. I think quite often it is perceived that if women gain more access rights to land, or they're supported in their not given more, are supported in their right to access land, that this can only work by taking land from men away. And I would actually see this as another way, as an opportunity to bring more land into agricultural production. And by that, I don't mean chopping down more rainforest or kind of to the detriment of nature. I would see a great opportunity to bring more land into food production through restorative land management. So in other words, bringing regenerative and restorative measures in there and start thinking whole ecosystems. And this is probably more from the home turf of where I'm coming from to this, is kind of promoting the investment in the green infrastructure that supports this. So supporting the infrastructure that provides the water, developing the farming techniques specific to a location that build up soil health, which at the same time helps managing drought and flooding, sequesters carbon, and starts and could be the beginning of developing whole new ecosystems. And the beauty of this is, you know, if you bring all those elements together, you could start at scale changing landscapes and potentially having an impact on climate. I don't even know where this might go, but I see the potential is huge, and I can see how that can actually link to creating more farmland, and therefore also almost by default creating more opportunities for women to farm this land. And I see a great opportunity for women playing a great role in the stewardship of the land, and I would call them then also the custodians of our future, because we talked about it earlier, just before the webinar, how the whole food system needs to change, needs to become more resilient. Valerie, you talked about the impact that conflicts have around the globe in very different parts of the world. And so therefore strengthening local food production, both for export, both for commodities, but also for nourishment and nutrition is key here. And I see how we can combine an environmental agenda around biodiversity and nature with a human development agenda, and particularly with promoting the voice of women in agriculture. And that is something I definitely will look out for opportunities at scale where we can take this forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eike, for your contribution and sharing some fresh and comprehensive ideas in this regard. And Niforti, I see your camera is off, but perhaps if you are here, great. We have a little bit of time left, so perhaps could you share shortly on some more suggestions on how to address those intersectional challenges that we are talking about today?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. I think based on my experience in Cameroon, I always try to speak from what I really experienced in the field. I'm always in the farm, like I'm a farm guy. What I would say is, for us to be able to solve the problems that we have in Cameroon, we must be ready to do the hard things, especially for women farmers. And this is what we always try to avoid. A lot of times, like the last time the EVWA Council sat and we had discussions on this, and one of the things I noticed was capacity building. I think it's amazing, but sometimes I feel like it's the easy thing sometimes to train, but I think what matters most is to implement, and implementing things that are really hard and things that are sometimes a bit expensive. I'll give an example. We constantly speak about drought and climate change, but how many farmers actually get their farms irrigated as female farmers? Now, these farmers produce food crops. It's just very easy for you to transform a community like where I am in Cameroon, in Limbe, where you can just go to a community and say, okay, we're going to take 500 farmers, and instead of spending 100 million on capacity building and all these things, we decided we are going to design just irrigation system for their farms. I have a female farmer. I want to be very, very precise so you understand. Now she has, she does pepper, huckleberry, and fluted pumpkin. Now she started planting at the time when the winds are about to go, I think a few months back, like August. So now the winds are going already, so we were going to have the dry season. Now, but what is changing her farm is the ability to have the capital to invest, because she's a bit comfortable. So now she can invest in doing what? In irrigating her farm. And now she has competitive advantage over the entire community, because she has a borehole in her farm and she has an irrigation channel where she can easily irrigate. So during the dry season, she'll be able to produce while others are not producing. Now she has a competitive advantage even over the men. We are not trying to compete over men, but at least going to the market now, when people are not, at that moment where people are not selling too much, she can sell now at higher prices, and she has that competitive advantage. So I think that we must try as much as possible to do the hard things, for providing this irrigation system for farmers, like also training, like what Lady Agri is doing is amazing. Solar systems is changing the game. Just imagine you have a solar system in your farm where you can dry just a fluted pumpkin. And I'm happy that these projects are going on in Cameroon. Unfortunately, I didn't know about them. Trust me, I would have visited to see what is going on, but I'm glad to know that you're doing this in Cameroon. And it's amazing. These are solutions that we need, things that are scalable, things that we can observe. So like I said, let's do the hard things. And then another thing we have to change is that I think is the infrastructure. Africa lacks is a complete mess. Like we don't have the infrastructure. We have no farm to market roads. All of these things, yeah, they affect both men and women. But at the end of the day, the women are most affected because they don't even have the vehicle. So usually men have cars. So I think that at higher stake, that is why the policy paper we have is really important. And if we can push this, like we said, everyone in every country who took part in this, and those in Cameroon, we can have delegations in the field to be able to just pay visits to the ministries and all of that. It would be really amazing, so that we can be able to see how we can get these infrastructures in place so that women can at least have a fair ground to compete with the men. It's really, really important. So I think that, like, to me, like I said, let's do the hard things. It might cost a bit more, but let's just do. If every woman can have just a little bit of irrigation for just 2,000 meters square for fluted pumpkin, these are food crops, it will go a long way. And the biggest advantage we have now, lastly, let me not take too long, is that food crops are becoming more expensive than cash crops, because a lot of men are now focused in the cultivation of cocoa. So the increase in price of cocoa has driven a lot of men to go into cocoa production. As we speak now, the price for pepper went up. It left let's say $200,000 for it's about $400. So it left like $150 to about $400 just this year, because a lot of men are now focused into the production of cash crop. That is where there is a lot of money, because the price of cocoa is up. So it gives now women a huge advantage if we can really, like what Lady Agri is doing, to say that yes, you're doing food crop. There's nothing wrong in doing food crops, but we are going to compete with the men, and we're going to produce food crop and be able to make a lot of money from it. And that is what is happening now. Food crops are so expensive, because everyone is focused on cash crops. So women has a huge advantage if only we can do the hard things for them and help them grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Neforti. Time is short, as always. And I think we could talk for many more hours, but we have an important announcement to make, and I will pass the floor to my colleague Maya for this purpose.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for the council members for sharing all this knowledge that you collected, and thank you also for the audience for joining us today. We're here to talk about the important work of the EVWA Council, but also as part of the Elevating the Voices of Women in Agriculture campaign at the Ban Ki-moon Center. We really want to highlight young people and what they're doing on the ground and how they're making a real difference in their communities by empowering women farmers. So since 2022, every year we select 30 young EVWA changemakers under 30 across Africa, such as Neforti, who has spoken, and we give them visibility through our platforms. These young leaders are implementing creative projects to tackle the everyday challenges women farmers face in their communities. And every year, a panel of experts chooses one of these changemakers who really stands out for their innovative project, its impact on women smallholder farmers, and also its potential to create a sustainable, positive change. And I'm very happy to announce that this year, the 2024 EVWA Champion is a young woman from Tanzania named Zuhura Ahmad. And congratulations to her. Unfortunately, she couldn't join. But I will show you a video message from her directly. And what is she doing? She empowers women farmers through seaweed farming in the coastal town of Bagamoyo in Tanzania. So to showcase her amazing work, the Ban Ki-moon Center awards her $5,000 to scale her initiative. And also, we made a documentary about her and her projects. I'm very happy to show you a trailer, a little sneak peek of her project. So I'll share the video right now.
We at the Ban Ki-moon Center, we believe in global citizen leaders. Young people that are active on the ground, that take action on the ground, that bring solutions to everyday challenges of climate change. Young people need to believe in the people, in the prosperity, and in the planet, and serve the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement. In our Elevating Voices of Women in Agriculture campaign, the EVWA campaign, we are awarding one specific champion every year out of a cohort of many that we curate. And this year we are very happy to announce in 2024 that a champion from Tanzania made the race. Her name is Zuhura and she is a seaweed farmer. She's working with many other farmers to produce seaweed products that are market ready, from oils to cosmetics to all sorts of soaps. And Zuhura is a real EVWA change maker, to the extent that she is not only empowering her own self, but also a whole community of female farmers that she's working with.
Wow.
So this is what you can expect from the upcoming documentary that we'll share on our platform. So please keep an eye out. And yeah, as you saw, Zuhura is doing amazing work on the ground in Tanzania through seaweed farming and empowering women farmers in Bagamoyo. She also has a video message for all of you. So I'm going to share another video right now. Just a second.
I've seen women are at the forefront. Hello there, my good name is Zuhura Ahmad. I'm based in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and I am currently a 26 years old. And I am the founder of She Shapes Nature. And the story behind that is that I can say that personally, I have grown in a family that I have seen women are at the forefront in agriculture activities. And in fact, about 54% of women in Tanzania are engaged in agriculture to sustain their livelihood. And I remember one day I went to our coastal area of Bagamoyo, and then I noticed that the women were in the ocean holding ropes. So out of curiosity, I went closer and saw that they were so busy with their activities. And then I took the chance to ask them and learned that they were farming seaweed. To be honest, I never knew about seaweed, but also I never knew that the women can enter in the ocean and farm anything like seaweed. But then I became inspired. I became inspired to see the women who are working tirelessly in seaweed sector, in seaweed farming. And therefore, as I got involved to them, I realized that their roles and contribution are not recognized, are not supported. And therefore, in 2022, I found She Shapes Nature and act as a bridge to collect the voices of women who are in the seaweed sector, but also to act as the bridge to connect with potential stakeholders to access the resources that they need to unlock the potential of seaweed sector, and then to enhance their skills for them to have a sustainable economic development. And as I speak, I'm not alone. I work with a team of expertise, including marine scientists. I work with a team of volunteers and local communities and women engagement lead who are supporting this journey of She Shapes Nature to be as it is today. And so far, we have empowered more than 25 women in seaweed farming, from farming, innovation, and to value addition of the seaweed, of the product that comes out of the seaweed, which is soap, oil, and the raw seaweed itself. And yeah, I thank you so very much, the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizen, for recognizing me as an EVWA champion for 2024. And this recognition is not only for me, but also for the team, the dedicated team that are working tirelessly to making sure that She Shapes Nature is alive and continuing to grow to impact more women in the seaweed sector, in the seaweed farming sector. And therefore, we really appreciate your support for acknowledging us as the champion for 2024. And I can say that as an EVWA champion for 2024 and the recognition of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizen, I'm looking forward to working with and to collaborate with a team of volunteers, but also the beneficiaries that we have, the beneficiary of the seaweed farming sector, to continue empower more women in the seaweed sector, because when it comes to seaweed sector, it's not only about farming, but also there is transportation, there is innovation where they can add the value into the seaweed and sell the product like soap, like oil, like lotions, and so many more amazing product that is nature friendly. And therefore, by 2025, I aim to empower and reach out to more than 3,000 women in local coastal communities so that they can be able to understand, but also to access their skills, resources, and tools they need to unlock the potential of seaweed sector, and especially the economic potential of the seaweed sector. And also I aim to connect young people to these women so that they can get the intergenerational knowledge for them to be part of the seaweed sector. Because when you look at this, the seaweed industry, there are more women compared to young people. So I really need to connect those young women and women as well, so that they can be able to participate in this seaweed sector, in the seaweed farming, in innovation and practices, so that we can all transform the economic potential of the seaweed sector, from farming to transportation to innovation and to the end products as well. And therefore, my call to action to young people, to stakeholders, let's all join the forces in this journey of She Shapes Nature. Let's all come together to support these initiatives and see how we can impact more women in the community, and see how we can bring transformative change in the community. Because when it comes to seaweed sector, it is the way not only for women, but also for the sustainable economic development and for the community. And yes, of course, the seaweed is the gift from the ocean. Thank you so very much for listening. And I hope to engage with you more and collaborate and making partnership in this journey together. Thank you so very much.
This was the message from Zuhura, and yeah, I'm sure that perhaps you also have some comments about seaweed farming, aquaculture. This is a very exciting sector, I think, that can be explored. And yeah, I'm giving back the floor to you, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Maya, for this wonderful announcement, and congratulations to Zuhura once again on her beautiful initiative. Perhaps I see that we have 2 minutes left, and maybe it's a good chance to have a very quick round with our panelists with the key takeaway that you would like the audience to go away with after the panel. And perhaps this can be a word, some keyword, or a very short sentence. And would anybody like to go first? I would ask perhaps Hillary in this case.
I'm in the hot seat. Very simple, trust women. I think we need to invest in them. We need to trust them with their investment, and we need to give them very concrete tools and equipment and access to the resources that we've highlighted in our policy paper. But definitely trust women. They're worth trusting, and we get impact by trusting them.
Thank you. That's a very powerful message. Eike?
I would say include men as the agents of change. Make them part of the change and the positive change. And to empower
Thanks so
women.
Wonderful. Neforti?
Give women what they need and they will shock you. They will shock you real time, big time. They are powerful. They are energetic. Thank you.
Thank you. And to crown it all, Valerie, what would be your key takeaway?
When women succeed, we all succeed in building food systems that are more inclusive, more sustainable, more resilient. So let's count on women and let's invest in them.
Beautiful. Thank you very much to all of you for this amazing panel. And let's keep finding unique solutions to all the challenges that we discussed. And let's keep developing partnerships to improve women's realities. Thank you, the audience, for listening. And I wish you a wonderful rest of the day.